Hello lovely people and welcome to my sewing channel. I'm Crystal and this is for the love of fabric. In this video, I'm going to be teaching you everything you need to know about getting started sewing. This is a beginner video, but if you are an experienced seamstress, please feel free to leave any nuggets of wisdom in the comments down below. As iron sharpens iron, so man sharpens another, right? So without further ado, let's get into it. So first things first, you're going to need a sewing machine. Now you could attempt to go ahead and try and sew your first garment all by hand, but that's going to take a lot of time and skill to make it, something wearable. I prefer Brother products, personally, because in my experience, they're more user-friendly than the one Singer machine I've used. I've heard that the Singer Heavy Duty is great for beginners though. Basically, you want something with over 5 stitch patterns and a one-touch back stitching button. I prefer a top-load bobbin, free arm, bright light, needle threader, a thread cutter. Mine is on the side, but probably an automatic thread cutter would be better, and one that comes with multiple presser feet. You can look online, but be careful that you don't get a dud for your first one like I did. Yeah, that happened. So I have posted links to most of these items that I speak about in the description below, so please go ahead and check those out. As an Amazon associate, I do earn from qualifying purchases, so please help a new blood out, y'all. Now you're gonna need an iron and ironing board. Pressing seams will make a massive difference in your sewing projects and can truly make or break your garment. You're also gonna need to obtain some sewing machine needles. There are varying sizes for different types of fabric. The lower numbers are for lighter fabric and the higher numbers are for heavier fabrics like denim. I would suggest that you get a multi-pack like the one I show on the screen here. Next, let's talk about thread. Don't skimp on the thread, y'all, okay? You don't want your seams to be weak or your sewing machine to be collecting a lot of thread dust, It's not good for your sewing journey. So Gutermann is great, but an all-purpose thread that's 100% polyester or a cotton blend is best to start out with. Coats & Clark and Singer brand threads work well too, in my opinion. Up next, fabric. I would recommend starting out with a cotton or linen because they're just easier to work with. Here's a pic of some really fun poplin cotton we found at Joann's. My daughter picked the rainbow leopard one, of course. My husband picked the middle and I picked the bottom one. Now you're gonna want a pattern, and so unless you're really good at eyeballing or you can already draft your own templates for garment and or accessory construction, you're gonna want a pattern. So you can find free PDF patterns online on websites such as like Mood Society. They have a lot of really good free patterns. Or you can search online or at your local fabric store for the big 4 patterns like Vogue, Simplicity, McCall's, Butterick, etc. I would suggest obtaining at least one that is beginner friendly and one that inspires you to set a goal. I think this should help motivate you to start sewing. Next, you're going to need some fabric shears, and I love my Guggenheim fabric shears. They are awesome. They are a little bit of an investment, but super worth it to get a good pair. And you don't want to cut anything else with your fabric shears other than just fabric because they get dull. I prefer to use my rotary cutters for all my fabric. They're usually just used for finer fabrics like silk, but I find that the time that it saves me is super worth it. If you choose to use rotary cutters, you're gonna need a mat, a self-healing mat, and some fabric weights. This is more of a monetary investment if you choose this method, but it's so worth it. It can be very dangerous, so be careful. I've heard of people slicing off the tip of their finger, so be careful. There are varying sizes of rotary blades, but I mainly just use the 45 and 60 millimeter for most projects. For fabric weights, you can just use anything that's small and heavy. I just made my own by cutting some fabric squares out of cotton, some cotton scraps, and serge the edges, place 3 to 4 45 millimeter washers in the middle and folded the fabric up and tied it with a rubber band. You will find yourself reaching for multiple different types of rulers as you get better and more familiar with sewing, And if you ever need to change the size of a pattern, it's called pattern grading, but just get something for now, and preferably something that's see-through. You may want to get a seam gauge and or a heat-resisting pressing ruler as well. These will help to keep your hemming consistent for better looking finished garments. You're probably going to want to get some pins of varying sizes and sharpness depending on the type of fabric that you intend to work with. Typically lighter fabrics like silk will call for a sharper pin. Stretch fabrics or knits call for a ballpoint pin so you don't break the tiny elastic threads that make up the fabric. I personally prefer to use floral pins because they have a larger head and are longer, so it's easier to pin the fabric and you don't have to use as many. Even more than those though, I prefer to use clips. Some fabrics will show where it's been pierced, so clips would be best for those, but in my experience I found that they can be used for any sewing project. Clover brand has some excellent clips. You can also find some on Amazon or at any fabric store. Don't forget the tailor's measuring tape. You'll need this to accurately take your body measurements so that you can create garments that will fit you appropriately. It's soft and will wrap around your body with ease, so be sure to get one that's at least 60 inches. You'll soon discover how beneficial having some tailor shock or fabric marking pins are to the construction process of your garments. Heat erasable marking pins are an absolute game changer. I have some from a company called Madame Sew, but friction pins are pretty amazing too. Just make sure you test a piece of your fabric to make sure it will come off. If the iron doesn't get it, then hand washing in warm water definitely will. You will most definitely need a seam ripper for the mistakes that will be made. And believe me, mistakes will be made along this sewing journey of ours. Oh my goodness. But it's okay because most of them can be fixed with a seam ripper and a little bit of patience. Probably best to get a few and of varying sizes for different projects, and because they do have a tendency to get dull over time. And here's a little bonus tip I'll throw in for good measure. You may be tempted to stock up on notions like elastic, zippers, buttons, etc., and especially fabric. But do consider that this hobby will take up a lot of space, time, and money. So you'll benefit greatly if you just buy for the specific project, unless there's an amazing sale, of course. You know, I know because fabric is my weakness.
So I hope you guys liked the video, and if you did, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so that you can have access to all the goods on the subject of sewing. And remember friends, you reap what you sow. Love you and hope your day is grand.